Welcome back, philosophy lovers and wanderers of positive ideas. I am philosophy Bachelor Stormcrow, and this is another translation of my early works. For your notice, I am using a voice actor for clearer pronunciations and powerful tellings. Before we dive in, if you enjoy these deep philosophical explorations, make sure to follow the podcast and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the next episode. Our topic in this section is evil. So, what is evil? First, if we must explain it with the often unpopular dualism, evil is the reality that will exist in opposition to good for as long as good exists. To understand evil, we must define goodness and draw its boundaries. Evil is the entity that remains beyond the boundaries we draw for good. We cannot create evil without creating good, but can good exist without evil? Although dualism would explain it this way, the purpose of good must be to exist without evil. Because otherwise, does all the effort we have put in until now turn into a futile struggle? The questions asked at the beginning and throughout the history of philosophy are, first and foremost, what is good and does good exist? The question, what is good, evolves into the question, what is the good thing? The discipline most obliged to explain evil is theology, which is tested by it. But even before the philosophy of religion, we need to investigate the existence of evil. Otherwise, religions have already provided a simple explanation. God willed it, and it was so. Or, like the gods of antiquity, you could even appoint a god to the ministry of evil. But why did the word evil appear in our language? Did the gods desire it, or did man invent it? Quick reminder, if you're finding value in these reflections, please tap like or leave a review where you're listening. It really helps spread philosophy to more curious minds. Yet the most popular paradox of good and evil is that their definitions are entirely personal. What is good for us is evil for another. What is evil for us is good for another. In this case, when we evaluate good and evil, we cannot universalize them. In fact, we explain good and evil through evaluations based on our individual needs. When we want to universalize this, we most simply need to attribute it to morality, and from there to religion or society. Then comes the question, what is society and what is religion? Because the conflicts between individuals and societies always confuse us. Society declares that something is good, while the individual perceives it as evil. The problem is to impose the good of society on the individual in the name of general well-being. In this case, does the general well-being imposed by society and religion ultimately emerge as evil for the individual? If so, for whose benefit is this society? The way theology deals with this is through the way society and religions interpret the good and evil of God. We are faced with the scenario of accepting what God and religions or society have declared as good and evil without question. Because in the face of the Creator and the divine authority he has established, good is what God commands and evil is what God has forbidden. When this is not enough, we need an evil for comparison. For example, in Christianity, the prophet Jesus represents good, while the fallen angel Lucifer or Satan represents evil. So why did Satan fall? Because he was proud, he was arrogant, and he wanted to be like God. This was seen as the greatest sin. But in fact, wasn't he struggling to gain freedom, fighting for humanity, and shouldering his responsibility? In Satanism, Lucifer is the light bearer, the bringer of knowledge. He is seen as the one who gave humanity the chance to rise by giving them knowledge and awareness. In Christianity, however, he is described as an angel who was cursed, fell to hell, and fought against the devil. So is Lucifer the representative of evil or of freedom? Which one is the truth? For many, the truth is that Lucifer is the representative of freedom. In this case, it is not enough to say that he is simply evil. In fact, he is someone who brought knowledge, awareness, and consciousness to humanity, who gave them the opportunity to rise, who gave them the chance to challenge God. But of course, religions that prioritize obedience could not accept this and declared him evil. When I was a teenager, especially in the 90s, every teenager who listened to heavy metal music was called a Satanist. In Turkey, even those who wore black clothes were accused of Satanism. I remember this well. Even though I was far from Satanism, I was accused just because of my clothing style and the music I listened to. In fact, I was a person who questioned everything. I was someone who was struggling to understand life and myself. but society saw me as evil, as someone to be excluded. The most fundamental paradox of evil is that it changes according to the environment, culture, religion, and society. Then perhaps the real question is this: is there absolute evil? If we are going to talk about evil in general, then we must divide evil into three categories. The first is evil for the sake of good. That is, it is an evil that is committed for the benefit of others or society. The most famous example of this is killing one person to save 100 people. In fact, most wars have been fought under the guise of doing good. But is this really good, or is it evil disguised as good? The second is natural evil. These are natural disasters, illnesses, pain and suffering that occur in nature. For example, earthquakes, floods, diseases. They are things that happen without human intervention, but they cause great pain. In fact, this is not evil in itself, but our perception of it as evil arises because it harms us. The third is chaotic evil. That is, evil committed without any purpose or reason. An evil that exists for its own sake. This is the scariest form of evil because it is unpredictable and uncontrollable. In fact, in mythology, chaotic evil is often represented as a monster or a great force of destruction. Chaos itself was already one of the primal elements in Greek mythology. Chaos was the beginning, the void. Order was born from chaos. This shows us that chaos and evil are actually necessary parts of the universe. In conclusion, we understand that evil exists by necessity of the universe's system and is more of a structure than a problem. The struggle we wage for life actually gives meaning to goodness and enables its evolution even at every moment we lose against evil. This is just like negatively and positively charged electrons attracting each other to turn a wheel. Without evil, there is no good. Without chaos, there is no order. Evolution, the system of the universe, finds meaning in everything, living or non-living, for survival. Evil exists not so much because God willed it, but as an equation of the system he created. Otherwise, the situation is not that God disregards our good or evil. I assume this sufficiently explains that God is neither good nor evil. In summary, evil is not a problem, but a rule of nature we must embrace. Finally, the question of the existence of suffering falls outside our topic. Perhaps it can be addressed another time. With wishes for days full of natural goodness where individual and societal good are intertwined, farewell. Thank you for listening. If this exploration opened new doors of thought for you, please follow, subscribe, and share it with others who love philosophy. And one more thing, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What should we explore in the next episode? Leave a comment with your ideas for the next topic. Your voice might shape our future journey. Until next time, stay curious and keep questioning.